January 11th, 1979. Johnny Carson was sitting across from John Wayne on the Tonight Show stage when something happened that changed television forever. The interview had started like any other. Laughter stories, the kind of easy chemistry that only comes from years of genuine friendship. But 11 minutes in, John Wayne stopped mid-sentence. He looked directly at Johnny with an expression that made the studio audience fall completely silent. "Johnny," the Duke said quietly, "I need to tell you something, and I need to tell America something because I don't know if I'm going to get another chance." What happened next has never been shown in full on television again. Johnny Carson, the man who had interviewed presidents, comedians, and the biggest stars in Hollywood history, completely collapsed. Not physically, emotionally, in a way that no one had ever seen before. The king of late night, the man famous for his unshakable composure, broke down crying on live television. But here's what most people don't know. 3 days before this interview, John Wayne had made a secret phone call to the Tonight Show producers. He had requested this appearance personally, and he had given them a warning that they never passed along to Johnny, a warning that would have changed everything. Johnny Carson walked onto that stage thinking it was just another interview with an old friend. He had no idea that John Wayne was about to say goodbye, not just to him, but to the entire nation. And he definitely wasn't ready for the 7 words that would shatter him in front of 40 million viewers. If you've ever wondered what true friendship looks like in its most painful moment, stay with me. This story will stay with you forever. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your location in the comments and hit subscribe because this is just the beginning. To understand why that January night destroyed Johnny Carson, you need to understand what John Wayne meant to him. Their friendship began in 1962 when Wayne first appeared on The Tonight Show. Most celebrity interviews were polished and predictable, but something different happened when Johnny and the Duke sat down together. They genuinely liked each other. Over the next 17 years, John Wayne appeared on The Tonight Show more than 30 times, and every single appearance was magic. The tough cowboy and the quick-witted host had a chemistry that audiences adored. Behind the scenes, their friendship ran even deeper. Johnny visited Wayne's home in Newport Beach. They went fishing together. When Johnny went through his painful divorces, Wayne was one of the few people who called just to check on him. No cameras, no publicity, just friendship. But what Johnny didn't know, what almost nobody knew, was that John Wayne had been hiding something since the summer of 1978. The cancer had come back. Years earlier, Wayne had beaten lung cancer. He had even done interviews about it, showing America that tough men could face disease and win. It became part of his legend, but this time was different. In June 1978, doctors discovered that stomach cancer had spread through his body. The diagnosis was devastating. 6 months, maybe less. John Wayne made a decision that stunned everyone close to him. He refused to hide. He refused to disappear and die quietly like so many celebrities before him. Instead, he wanted to keep living publicly, keep working, keep being the John Wayne that America needed. But there was one thing he had to do first. He had to say goodbye to the people who mattered most. His family knew. A few close friends from Hollywood knew. And now he had decided Johnny Carson needed to know. But Wayne didn't want Johnny to find out through a phone call or a private conversation. He wanted to tell him on The Tonight Show, the place where their friendship had become famous. What Wayne didn't anticipate was just how unprepared Johnny would be for the truth. The Tonight Show studio was electric that Thursday evening. When John Wayne walked out from behind the curtain, the audience erupted. Standing ovation, cheers, the kind of welcome reserved for American legends. At 71 years old, the Duke still commanded every room he entered. He was wearing his signature Western jacket, moving with that famous confidence that had defined 50 years of Hollywood history. Johnny stood to shake his hand, grinning like a kid meeting his hero. For the first 11 minutes, everything was perfect. Wayne told stories about filming True Grit, the movie that had finally won him an Oscar. He did impressions of directors who had been too scared to give him notes. He joked about getting older, about how his horse was starting to outrun him on set. The audience loved every second. But Johnny Carson had spent 25 years reading people on television. He knew when something was wrong, and something was very wrong with John Wayne that night. The Duke kept pausing between stories, his eyes drifting across the audience like he was memorizing every face. His jokes landed perfectly, but there was weight behind his smile that Johnny had never seen before. Then it happened. After a story about Dean Martin, John Wayne's entire demeanor shifted. The showman disappeared, the legend faded, and suddenly, sitting across from Johnny Carson was just a tired man carrying a burden too heavy to hold alone. "Johnny," Wayne said, his voice dropping low, "before we go any further, I need to tell you something." The laughter stopped instantly. 400 people in the studio held their breath. Johnny leaned forward, his instincts screaming that something important was about to happen. "Of course, Duke, whatever you need to say." John Wayne took a deep breath. He looked at the camera, at the millions of Americans watching from their living rooms, and then back at his friend. "I'm dying, Johnny." 3 words, just 3 words. But they hit Johnny Carson like a freight train. His face went pale. His hands, always so steady, so controlled, began to tremble. The studio was completely silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, just the sound of 2 friends facing the hardest truth there is. And Johnny Carson, the man who always had the perfect words, couldn't speak at all. What he did next shocked everyone, including himself. If this story is hitting you in the heart, hit that like button right now and tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching this from? For 17 years, Johnny Carson had been the steadiest man on television. He had handled awkward guests with grace. He had navigated controversial moments with perfect timing. He had interviewed thousands of people through joy and tragedy and never once lost his composure on camera until now. The moment John Wayne said those 3 words, "I'm dying, Johnny," something inside Carson shattered. His head dropped. His shoulders began to shake. And for the first time in tonight's show history, Johnny Carson broke down, sobbing on live television. Not quiet tears, not dignified emotion, raw, uncontrollable grief. The audience didn't know what to do. Producers in the control room froze, unsure whether to cut to commercial. Cameras kept rolling, capturing something that was never supposed to happen on network television. And then John Wayne did something that revealed everything about who he really was. The dying man stood up. Slowly, carefully, the Duke walked over to where Johnny was sitting. He put his arm around his friend's shoulders and held him. Hollywood's toughest cowboy comforting the king of late night while he cried. "It's okay, Pilgrim," Wayne said softly, using his famous catchphrase like a prayer. "It's okay. I've made my peace with it. Now I need you to make yours." For almost 2 minutes, neither man spoke. The audience sat in stunned silence, tears streaming down faces throughout the studio. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was something sacred. Finally, Johnny lifted his head. His eyes were red. His voice was wrecked. "Duke," he managed, "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to say goodbye to you." Wayne smiled. That famous crooked smile that had won over generations of Americans. "Then don't say goodbye," he replied. "Just talk to me like we're sitting on my porch in Newport Beach, just 2 old friends talking about life." And that's exactly what they did. For the next 20 minutes, Johnny Carson and John Wayne abandoned the interview format completely. They talked about their children, their fears, their regrets. Wayne admitted he was terrified of leaving his family behind. Johnny admitted he didn't know how to keep doing the show, knowing his friend wouldn't be watching anymore. At one point, a man in the audience stood up, tears on his face. "Mr. Wayne," he called out, "your movies taught me how to be brave. How do I be brave now?" The Duke looked at that man with absolute sincerity. "Courage isn't about not being scared," Wayne said. "It's about being scared and moving forward anyway. You admit the fear. You tell the people you love that you love them and you keep going. That's the only secret I know." Johnny signaled to his producer to clear the rest of the show. No other guests, no comedy bits, just this. "Duke," Johnny said, his voice still shaking, "I need you to know something. You're not just a guest on this show. You're my brother, and whatever time you have left, I'm going to be there. Not as a host, as family." John Wayne nodded slowly, his own eyes glistening. "That means everything, Johnny. More than you'll ever know." What happened after the cameras stopped rolling would stay secret for over a decade. The moment The Tonight Show ended that night, NBC's phone lines exploded. Over 15,000 calls came in within the first 2 hours. Not complaints, not confusion. People were calling to say thank you, to share their own stories about facing illness, about saying goodbye to people they loved, about finding courage in impossible moments. The American Cancer Society reported receiving more calls the next morning than they had received in the entire previous month. Doctors' offices across the country were flooded with appointment requests from people who had been putting off checkups for years. John Wayne's honesty didn't just move people, it saved lives. But what the public never saw was the friendship that unfolded over the next 5 months behind closed doors. True to his word, Johnny Carson became John Wayne's constant companion. He visited Wayne's Newport Beach home twice a week, sometimes more. He brought food from the Duke's favorite restaurants. They watched old westerns together, laughing at the fight scenes Wayne could no longer perform. When Wayne was hospitalized for emergency surgery in March, Johnny canceled 3 shows and stayed at the hospital. He slept in the waiting room. He held Wayne's hand when the pain got bad. "Johnny never treated me like I was dying," Wayne told his daughter during one of his final lucid weeks. "He treated me like I was living. That made all the difference." The Tonight Show received thousands of letters in the weeks following that broadcast, but the ones that hit hardest came from veterans. John Wayne had been a symbol of American courage for decades. His war movies had inspired millions of soldiers. And now, watching him face death with honesty and dignity, veterans across the country felt compelled to write. One letter from a Marine in Texas captured what so many felt. "I watched John Wayne movies to learn how to be tough, but watching him on The Tonight Show, I learned something more important. I learned that real strength means being honest about being scared. That takes more courage than anything I ever saw in combat." Johnny read that letter on the air 2 weeks later. He barely made it through without breaking down again. John Wayne watched that broadcast from his hospital bed. According to the nurses who were there, it was one of the last times they ever saw him smile. On June 11, 1979, exactly 5 months after that historic Tonight Show appearance, John Wayne passed away at UCLA Medical Center. He was 72 years old. But the story doesn't end there. If this is touching your heart, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from right now, and hit subscribe if you haven't already. The ending of this story will change how you see friendship forever. John Wayne's funeral was private, only family and closest friends. Johnny Carson sat in the front row right beside Wayne's children. When asked to speak, Johnny almost refused. He wasn't sure he could get through it without falling apart again. But then he remembered something the Duke had told him during one of their final conversations. "Don't cry at my funeral, Johnny. Make them laugh. That's what I would have wanted." So Johnny stood up and told a story. He told about the first time John Wayne appeared on The Tonight Show back in 1962. How the Duke had accidentally knocked over the entire desk while demonstrating a fight scene. How Johnny had to finish the interview sitting on the floor. How Wayne had laughed so hard he couldn't breathe. By the end, everyone in that room was laughing through their tears. "That was the Duke," Johnny said finally. "He could make you feel something real. Whether he was playing a cowboy or just being himself, he made you believe everything was going to be okay, even when it wasn't." After the funeral, Johnny made a promise to Wayne's family. He would keep the Duke's memory alive. Every year on June 11th, the anniversary of Wayne's death, Johnny would honor him on The Tonight Show. Sometimes a brief tribute, sometimes a longer segment with clips from their interviews together. For 13 straight years until Johnny retired in 1992, he never missed once. "John Wayne taught me something important," Johnny said during his final tribute. "He taught me that real strength isn't about hiding your feelings. It's about sharing them, even when it breaks you." But the true legacy of that January night wasn't just about 2 friends saying goodbye. That Tonight Show episode from January 11th, 1979, is now studied in journalism schools across America. Professors use it to teach students about authentic moments, how the most powerful broadcasts aren't scripted, they're human. Grief counselors show clips to families struggling with terminal diagnosis, demonstrating what real support looks like. Before that night, serious illness was discussed in whispers. After watching John Wayne face death with such courage, families everywhere found permission to have honest conversations of their own. Johnny Carson always called it the most important moment of his 30-year career. I interviewed presidents, Johnny said in one of his final interviews before his own death in 2005. I talked to kings and movie stars and the greatest comedians who ever lived. But nothing mattered more than that night with Juke because that wasn't television. That was two friends saying goodbye. And somehow America got to be part of it. John Wayne's last Tonight Show appearance proved something that still matters today. Vulnerability isn't weakness. Saying goodbye with honesty and love is the greatest gift we can give the people we care about. And sometimes the bravest thing anyone can do is let the world see them cry. If this story moved you, subscribe for more true stories about the moments that changed television forever. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that real strength means being honest about your heart. And remember, never wait to tell the people you love how much they mean to you. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. I read every single one.